The laner role within Pokemon Unite is going to be the second role within Pokemon Unite, meaning that the jungle is going to be the first role, making it the most important role within Pokemon Unite. But don't get me wrong, the laner role within Pokemon Unite is not going to be cast away as if it was nothing. The laner role is still important within Pokemon Unite. And today I would like to teach you how this role works. If you have brought the Carolina Reaper, like I asked, I can bring you the burrito full of information on how to do the laner role within Pokemon Unite. Let's first ask ourselves what the definition of a laner is within Pokemon Unite. The laner role within Pokemon Unite is going to be any Pokemon that is not in jungle. Therefore, you could be like the top lane or the bottom lane, and you will still be counted as a laner, just as long as you stay within that lane and rotate to any lane that really needs it. Therefore, the laner role is going to be dealing with mostly the lanes, while the jungler is going to be mostly dealing with jungles or anything that has to deal with the enemy jungle or the enemy force overall, because the jungler is just going to be over leveled more than you are. Therefore, the laner is going to be mostly worried about having to score, having to block the scores, etc. Items mostly good for a laner is going to be such as stacking items. Stacking items are really great for a laner role just early game. If you have stacking items like attack weight, special attack specs, or even the Aeos cookie, those are really great for Pokemon who mostly stay in lane and just better scorers overall. Laners also have to know the fact of when to rotate, such as having to rotate to Rotom or having to rotate to Dreadnought. Having to see where opponents are is just key in every game, no matter what role you are. If you see a ton of people down at Dreadnought, don't go for Dreadnought, because you'll have a least likely chance of stealing Dreadnought. Or the same applies for Rotom. If there's a lot of people for Rotom, don't go to Rotom, go to Dread. Therefore, you're just going to have a better way of starting the game. The next thing I would like to talk about is laners. As I said before, laners have to stay in lane. Therefore, laners do not steal the jungle. Junglers need the jungle a lot more than you do, even if you are way far behind. If you're like level 4 after the first Dreadnought, don't steal the jungle. The jungle role is going to need it, as the junglers are going to need the jungle all game compared to you having to need it just to get to level 5. So the next question I think you might want to ask is like, well, what if the jungler is not going to get it? If the jungler is just getting the jungle just for early game experience, just to get its final evolution, or just to get to level 9, just take it, because if the jungler's not coming back, it's just free XP just sitting there. But you have to make sure that jungler is not going to come back into the jungle. Don't just go in there and say, oh, it came back up in like 3 seconds, and it's been up for like 5 seconds, jungler's not coming. Well, that's because either jungler is doing something or the jungler is getting XP within the core fishes of the center of the map. Therefore, I think the core fishes of the actual center, the center where you see all the core fishes, the 4 of them, I feel like those can be taken as it is, because the core fish are not a huge impact for the jungler, as he's actually got jungle within his area, or he can go into enemy jungle, steal theirs, or if he got bees, he really doesn't need a lot more experience. But just make sure that junglers are getting any XP in the center, as your job is not to get XP. Your job is to block the goals or score goals. This also brings up to my next point of like, what is the key item of having a laner? All laners need to just either, if you crush it early game, it's really great, but any laner would need to know when to not overextend or when not to stay back all the time, as staying back all the time can have the enemy push you up and get you killed, or you can overextend by over rushing the enemy, and this can get you killed, as well as the jungler can show up at any moment, or the extra teammate that you sent on respawn is going to come back, and you are just not going to get any scores in or kill that enemy that you really want to kill. Therefore, laning is more of a team spot than a solo spot. Meaning, a lot of people will want to go 2 top and 2 bottom, compared to one person being the top lane just by themselves, because they won't think they'll be able to handle it. So most of the time I would rather have a triple lane if I have a 5-man stack. If you're in a solo queue, I would rather you prefer to go into a 2v2. This way it just makes it easier for you, compared to having to be able to just fight over any resources because you're by yourself, or having to go to spots early because just because you're by yourself. This brings me to my next point of need to do in the early game. Laners don't always need to get all the XP early game as it is, as some characters don't really need all of this XP at the same time. Therefore, some laners can live being at level 1 still while being in the early game. Characters such as Snorlax or like Pikachu are really great, being able to have to be at low level early game in order to just pop off as it is. Although with Pikachu you kind of do want either Electro Ball or Thunder, it just makes it a lot better. But what are the laners within Pokemon Unite? The support roles, some of the all-rounders, if not all of them, or at least some attacker roles, are going to be best roles as laners in Pokemon Unite. But what are some of these roles that are really great within Pokemon Unite? All defenders are going to be just phenomenal in lane, as it is compared to having them be in jungle. Therefore, it's just better for them to be in lane rather than in jungle. Having supports in lane, supports just don't need that much XP anyway, so they can afford to be able to not be within jungle as it is. Characters like Mime or Eldegoss, they're just great at level 4 anyway, so it's useless for them to be in jungle and just much better to be in lane as they can control a lot more within a lane. Like Eldegoss can speed boost a Rotom and just get it right into the goal as fast as it can, along with characters in the all-rounder role such as Lucario or Charizard or Machamp. Machamp was seen as a great jungler in the early state of Pokemon Unite, but he just turned out to be worse and worse as time went on, because Machamp starting as Machop, he's just great in the early game as it is, compared to having characters like Decidueye or like Greninja, who are just lacking on the damage side early game. Although, when I said some attackers are great laners in Pokemon Unite, I mean attackers that rely mostly on their abilities to deal damage. This would be characters like Pikachu, Cramorant, Ninetales, or Sylveon for that matter. These characters just really don't need to go into jungle, because these characters are just really great in lane, early game, mid game, all game, because they rely on their abilities in order to deal damage compared to some of these other characters. Although all the attackers just sometimes need to be in lane compared to a lot of the other roles, because these attackers shouldn't really need to be in jungle, except for like some characters just need it because their power spikes just get too big. Early gaming, you could just swing the game in your favor, but some attackers are just a lot better in lane, just making them the best laners to be within a lane by themselves. And I think that's going to cover it for the laner role. It's just that key aspects is to this also brings to the point where it's just don't always rotate for an objective when an objective appears, as objectives are important to a laner role, such as Dreadnought or such as Rotom, but always make sure to see where these who's at these objectives and which one's more important for the time being. Therefore, I think that's going to conclude the video on Spicy Burrito. Just make sure to remember to bring the Ghost Pepper next time, as I'm going to go over the best defender role within Pokemon Unite. And I'll see you all next time.